Now that we've talked about some of this other content, let's go ahead and discuss the timeline. The timeline is where you're going to be doing the majority of the work in Adobe Premiere. The timeline is where you're going to lay out clips, reorient clips, and essentially build your narratives, build your stories. So let's go ahead and jump in and see the different parts of the timeline in Adobe Premiere. Okay, so here is the timeline panel in Adobe Premiere. In the timeline, you're going to actually see any sequences that you have opened up. A sequence is a series of clips that you've got laid out in some form in one of these tracks, these horizontal bars that are built vertically up and down in this panel. So each track will hold a variety of different clips. Now, I want to be clear that as we build stories, we generally would like to try and keep each track associated with different types of material in our projects. So, for example, video 1 might be associated with our main narrative. Video 2 might be cutaways. Video 3 might be graphics. Video 4 we might deal with something like say locator graphics. So for example, lower thirds, over the shoulders, things like this. We may do video 5s as adjustment layers and so forth and so on. Each layer will hold different types of content. This is a great way of keeping things organized, but not we don't have to try and force everything to fit into a single track. They each correspond and interrelate with one another in a very effective way. Now we'll talk about editing in a later video, but I did want you to understand that. So, jumping back into the timeline, each horizontal bar is called a track. Each track has a name that's associated with it. Video 1, Video 2, so forth and so on. In each one of these tracks, if we move just above the name, you'll see the ability to, in video, view or deactivate that individual track by clicking the eyeball. It's right there. So for example, in video 1, if I turn off the eyeball, I'm toggling track output is what it says. This is a fancy way of saying that I essentially turn off that track and I will no longer see any content that's associated with it. In audio, I have the same sort of thing available. I can mute the track, at which point I will hear nothing in audio 1 track. I would also be able to solo the track. Now, soloing and muting kind of are flip sides of the same coin. Muting means that I'm going to silence that whole track. Solo means that I will silence everything but the tracks I have soloed. So, mute and solo. Let's focus for a moment on the video sections and talk about just what we see in the video tracks. Each video track can be expanded or minimized by clicking in this empty area right before you get into the actual timeline area. This area is called the timeline. This blue bar is called the playhead. So just to the left of the timeline area, if we double click, we can minimize or maximize that area so that we can see the individual clips. Now, over here to the left of the names, we have what's called targeting and patching. Now, targeting and patching are fancy names for essentially activating or directing the program to send files that you want to different areas. So for example, if we come in and we so if we look in here and we look just to the left of the name, we'll see our track targeting and track patching. I'll talk more about how these actually work in a later video, but in short, we can turn on and turn off any targeted tracks, and then we can patch them by simply clicking on the track layer. This is very helpful in certain editing workflows, but again, we'll talk about the editing workflows in a later video. Up at the top, we'll see several tools that will be immediately important to us. First of all, Snap. Snap in Timeline allows you to move a clip in, and then it will link with other clips that you've got. This is very, very fast and very, very helpful for building sequences. So when your snapping is on, if I scroll down, when snapping is on, as I move a clip close to another, it will link on and eliminate any kind of space between the previous clip and the one that you just brought in. Very helpful. When it's turned off, that sort of process doesn't occur, but you can start pushing clips over one another, which is also sometimes beneficial. Next to snapping, we have what's called linked selection. As long as this is turned on, any clip we select will move both the video and the audio that's associated with it together, just like that. If it's turned off, when we select one or the other, the video will be selected but the audio won't, or the audio will be selected but the video won't. This will get your video and audio out of sync, but it will also let you do things like let's just Command Z to undo. This will also allow you to do things like perhaps start an interview before the video comes in. So there are times where linking selections actually do serve a real purpose. We'll talk about the other options in a later video, but those are the ones you're going to be using most often. Jumping into the audio section, we'll talk very briefly about the different options we have here. Again, mute, solo, enable for recording is an option, and then voiceover recording. Now, if you see options here that you don't have, or you would like to customize the options, if you control click in the empty area, you can customize the options that you have available to you. And these will allow you to bring options in just like you did in the Program Monitor and Source Monitor. Drag them in, drop them off, and decide what it is that you might need to use. For example, I like having a track VU meter, so I put that on all my tracks. These are the primary tools that you're going to use in the timeline. We're going to talk about how these individual tools work when we get to editing, but these are the primary ones that you're going to use again and again and again throughout your time using Adobe Premiere. How you use them becomes more important. So we'll talk about that in a later video. See you then.